So we're going to redo the 2014 NBA draft, but Joel Embiid as the first overall pick is the weirdest thing ever because, well, one, he's the best player here, so just based on talent alone, he should be number one, right? Well, he was injured for 2 years, which I think still goes into this if you're doing a redraft, but it also gets more confusing when we see that the team that would end up drafting Embiid with the first overall pick in 2014 would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is weird because originally they drafted Andrew Wiggins and then they immediately traded him. So what the hell happens with the Cleveland Cavaliers situation? I mean, we could talk about Embiid. If they would end up keeping him, then you fast forward 2 seasons and, I mean, the guy's awesome. And everything he would be doing for the 76ers at this very moment would be done with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the pairing of him as well as with Kyrie Irving would be pretty damn cool. But as we all know, what ended up happening was they drafted Andrew Wiggins and then they traded him to the T-Wolves for Kevin Love. So does Embiid still get traded to the T-Wolves for Kevin Love and then LeBron James is still on the Cleveland Cavaliers? I don't know, this is freaking weird. So I don't have an exact answer for you. So this is just me acknowledging that with the first overall pick, Joel Embiid should be drafted because he's the most talented guy. But then there's the 2 years of being injured on top of what ends up happening with that pick and LeBron signing with the Cavs. It's the most confusing thing frickin' ever, but I still need to talk about it. So there you go with Embiid, with the weirdest pick ever, which when you think about it, pretty much could potentially screw up the entire rest of the draft, but we have to do something. Number 2 overall, Andrew Wiggins to the Milwaukee Bucks. Wiggins is an interesting player in the sense of the scoring was like the one thing he could do right away, and then what is he now, in his 3rd season or something? There's been some questions about his all-around game when it comes to his playmaking, his rebounding, and his defense, which has actually been kind of disappointing, even though that seemed to be like the one thing he was going to be really good at. But I'm confident given his age, he can figure all those things out, and when you combine his already natural scoring ability, shooting, ability to finish at the rim, posting up, driving, on top of how athletic he is, Andrew Wiggins is still a hell of a talent that I believe Milwaukee would take. And then you have Andrew Wiggins and Giannis, which would make them probably like the most lethal fast break duo in the NBA. Number 3, Jabari Parker to the Philadelphia 76ers. Funny enough, both Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker have similar things they need to work on, a lot of it being defense. I'd give Wiggins the slight nod just because he's a bit more athletic than Jabari, but still, Parker's really stepped up since he hurt himself with the ACL because he always looked like a natural scorer and all that cool stuff. But when you have Jason Kidd yelling at you not to shoot 3-pointers on top of coming off of an injury, the points might not go in right away, but they have begun to do that for him IRL, which I guess that means that it would still end up happening with the 76ers. At least we assume. I don't know, maybe he'd show up in Philadelphia and be like, you know what, the weather sucks, I don't want to be here. Then again, Philadelphia weather and Milwaukee weather, is it any different? I don't know. 4th overall pick goes to Jordan Clarkson of the Orlando Magic now. They originally selected Aaron Gordon in this spot, and then they would later on get Elfrid Payton. Payton has not exactly been that great for them, whereas Jordan Clarkson has been really damn good for the Lakers, so they get themselves a point guard in Clarkson, and he actually gets more minutes and a bit more of a responsibility because he's not balancing playmaking and ball handling duties with D'Angelo Russell as well as Lou Williams. So hopefully Clarkson becomes something for the Orlando Magic. And I want to warn Laker fans now, the Magic already rob you on this one, and they potentially rob you later on with this very same draft. Like I told Knicks fans in the last video, this isn't real life, you still get the guys, it's gonna be okay, and Jordan Clarkson ends up in Orlando, so that's good. And now you probably already saw him on the footage, or maybe you didn't. Nikola Jokic, number 5 to the Utah Jazz, and Jokic's passing ability just makes no damn sense given that he's a center who is making like behind the back passes and around his head sort of passes. I don't know if either one of those are true, I just assume they are. But he is putting up a lot of assists regardless, and his overall ability even if he's not super athletic and he does have work to do in terms of stopping the other team from scoring, he makes your team pretty damn good offensively with the mid-range jumper, the scoring inside, as well as that passing. And since Jokic was given more minutes by the Denver Nuggets, he's putting up like 27 and 11 in the month of January, which is a pretty damn insane amount of production. But he really is that good. But there is a question now with Utah's center position, which is, what the hell happens to Rudy Gobert? I don't know. Can I mess with time on this one? Like, do they know that Jokic becomes good, but they don't know that Gobert becomes good too? What are the rules on redrafting videos? Is there like some document I need to read if I Google it? I don't know. So I have no idea what happens to Rudy Gobert, whether he stays on the team, gets traded, I don't frickin' know. For the sake of a redraft, they go with Jokic. What number is this one? It's number 6, the Celtics. They draft Aaron Gordon because they need some ridiculous amount of help on the front line. And they use this pick initially on Marcus Smart. There's no point guards that are really available for them to replace Rondo when they inevitably trade him. There are some good shooting guards, but they already have Avery Bradley. And so there were a couple of guys in the front court I had to think of. And the reason I'm going with Aaron Gordon over, I'll just say someone like a Julius Randle for them is Gordon's just better defensively. He's also way more athletic. And given that they had already had Jared Sullinger for 2 seasons, they probably got tired of Sullinger not being able to jump. So they figure, let's get someone who can jump and then some in Aaron Gordon. And I would hope that Brad Stevens would know how to use Gordon in the sense of putting him at the power forward position and not having him play on the wing and shooting a bunch of three-pointers like Frank Vogel and the Orlando Magic are currently doing in real life with Gordon. I don't know. But he goes number 6, and I just think he has a whole hell of a lot of potential. 7th, we're going to go with Zach LaVine on the Lakers. Sorry, Julius Randle. Given the scoring that LaVine has showed with the Minnesota Timberwolves while also having to share time with Wiggins and Towns, LaVine could actually have been looked at as kind of like the not as good successor to Kobe Bryant, who has hair here because that's just how it happened. Don't worry about Kobe having hair, it's fine. Could LaVine be a big time like 20 plus point scorer if he was more of like a primary ball handler? Maybe. We have to remember in this scenario they don't get Jordan Clarkson, so it's a similar style of player who could end up being a better one. But the reason Clarkson ended up on the Magic is Clarkson's closer to a point guard than Zach LaVine is. LaVine really does most of his damage at the 2-guard spot. Could be one of those situations where, alright, once Kobe retires, LaVine can step in and, of course, not be as good, but still be someone who can put up some points. With the number 8 pick, the Sacramento Kings draft their 900th shooting guard in a row, but luckily with Rodney Hood, this one seems to work out, as unlike Ben McLemore, who is a shooter who can't shoot, and then Nick Stauskas, who goes to Philadelphia and then actually becomes a player, Rodney Hood would probably step in and be someone pretty good for the Kings right away. He does get himself in trouble sometimes with some over-dribbling and occasionally taking some awkward mid-range jumpers, but when you look at him and the point production that he's had for the Utah Jazz, you see this guy and you're like, oh, this guy can be a big-time scorer, and he would make the Kings just actually kind of tough to defend outside of DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay sometimes. So that'd be pretty good. The number 9 pick, the Charlotte Hornets, at this time not having a shooting guard, they go with Gary Harris. And if you remember, this was the disaster season where they signed Lance Stevenson at the 2-guard position, and then Stevenson was shocked when he found out that he wasn't going to be the star player of the team, and Kemba Walker was and should have been shooting the ball more often. Now hopefully Gary Harris would step in and be more of a shooter and a defender and not someone who would complain when other guys were shooting the ball. I mean, if we recall not too long ago, these guys traded for Courtney Lee at the deadline. With this, they'd basically be drafting a long-term version of Courtney Lee with Gary Harris, so a nice solid pick at the shooting guard position for them. And then number 10, the Orlando Magic looking for a big man. They go with Julius Randle. This was actually the weirdest pick ever because it was like drafted by the Magic and then it was traded to the Sixers. It became Dario Saric and Elfrid Payton. For the sake of this, Julius Randle ends up on Orlando, and he does have work to do defensively, no doubt, but he has shown a very good ability of scoring inside, using his athleticism, but he's also been really making things happen as a playmaker for the Lakers this year, averaging about 4 assists for them. He just needs to do some work on defense, and I'm sure he can get there, but as of right now, it hasn't happened, and hopefully the Magic wouldn't screw him up too bad by signing 9 million frontcourt players with Bismack Biyombo and Serge Ibaka, and they already have Vucevic. Some other names for you that eventually go in this thing: Marcus Smart, Elfrid Payton, Jeremy Grant, Dante Exum, TJ Warren, Clint Capella, Doug McDermott, Yusuf Nurkic.